1176. I bought my first one for $250. I still have it 30 years later.
Dude, I'll give you $300 for it.
I just sold a D version for $3,500 and was able to buy my silent air conditioner I could record condenser mics in the room.
Well, that's certainly going to go up in value. Welcome to Recording Studio Rockstars. I'm Lid Shaw, and this is the podcast created to help you become a rock star of the recording studio. Hello, rock stars. It's your host, Lid Shaw. I created this show to introduce you to real-world recording professionals to hear their stories and learn from their experiences so that you can take your records to the next level and be a rock star of the studio yourself. My guest today is Mr. Tommy Wiggins, a singer, songwriter, producer, educator, and mastering engineer now living in Nashville, Tennessee. He began his career in Minneapolis as an award-winning recording artist, releasing many records through the 80s and 90s, and even establishing his own record label called Chili Dog Records to focus on alternative music. With his experience in recording music, Tommy then added teaching audio to his resume at the Minneapolis Hennepin Technical College, and later as the program director for the Cuyahoga Community College's Department of Recording Arts in Ohio. Tommy is also creator, host, and artistic director of the 5-time Emmy-winning music interview program, Words and Music, and concert performance program, Crooked River Groove, with 400 episodes since 2001. More recently, Tommy lives here in Nashville, Tennessee, and records and masters music right here from his own studio, Multitracks, where I'm happy to be joining you for Recording Studio Rockstars. Please welcome Tommy Wiggins to Recording Studio Rockstars. Tommy, my friend, are you ready to rock?
I've always been ready to rock.
I get that impression about you, dude. So I've done my version of an introduction, which I probably skipped over many things. Tell us more about who you are and how you got to be here.
Well, I'm here right now because my wife, who is way smarter than me, and I follow her in her career choices, she is now at Vanderbilt, and before that was in Cleveland, and we raised our children in St. Paul. So that's really the kind of the backwards trajectory. But really, I've always been a songwriter. It's always what I've ever wanted to do when I grow up, and I'm still waiting to grow up. But I wanted to write songs, I wanted to sing songs, I wanted to record them with my friends and go play gigs. And here I am in Nashville, still, all these years later, doing the same thing.
Nice, man. So no disrespect to St. Paul when I think I mentioned Minneapolis, but...
You all do that.
Why is it that we do that? Actually, my brother went to St. Paul. He went to McAllister and studied music there, so I know a little bit about that scene, and it's pretty fantastic.
I learned how to write songs in the music practice labs on the Practice Steinways at McAllister, where I went to school, and I met my wife.
Nicely done. He met his wife at McAllister. What is it about McAllister?
Well, it's a small school.
And actually today, not to digress too much, but today I'm wearing my brother's T-shirt for his music school in Brooklyn, the Brooklyn Music Factory. So there it is, full circle.
There it is, yes.
All right, so Tommy, would you like to start us off today with a little bit of an inspirational quote, something to get us kind of excited about making records?
Yes. When I was directing a recording program up in Cleveland, Ohio at Cuyahoga Community College. It was Cuyahoga Community College, CCC. So what I said is, what does CCC mean to me? It was a collaborative school. It's basically a community college. It's like has 4 campuses, so it's pretty big. But it's create, collaborate, and build a community.
Nice.
If you have those 3 things in your heart and in your soul, it's my belief that you can be anywhere in the world and you can create, you can find people to collaborate with, and no matter if you're 1,000 miles from any recording center in the world, you can create a community and do exactly what we're doing here and what you do in your studio and all of your podcasts and things like that. It's really about community, because you can't make it alone. I mean, music is a team sport.
It is indeed. And I like your create, collaborate, community. It's really full circle, right? It almost should be a circle, right? Because the community begets the creativity again in the collaboration.
It just builds on itself. And the thing of it is that everybody in the world wants to belong to something bigger than they are. Because, I mean, we're just really little people, right? If you go outside at night and you look at the stars, who are we? We're this little speck of life form on this one dinky little planet in the universe.
Don't call my planet dinky.
I'm calling your planet dinky, buddy. Your planet is dinky, but it's what we got. And the thing is, we all want to be part of something bigger than ourselves. And my job really has been, I'm kind of the Pied Piper of recording schools. And what a recording school is, the cool thing is that all of a sudden in two places, there weren't recording schools before I started one in Minneapolis and also in Cleveland, and all of a sudden, all the misfit toys come together and find people of similar interests, and from all these generations. And I've been, I did the, recording schools for, I was the director for like 25 years, and altogether of all these things. And so all these generations of music, and all these kids coming in with their version of what cool and what their sound is, which keeps me young. Because I'm hearing everything, and creating that community. So, I can go down now saying, okay, I created a school where several thousand people learned how to record their own music, and I mean that's pretty cool. But those people have started studios with each other. They've started bands with each other. They're working in music stores. They're doing, and they're keeping in contact with each other. And to me, that's the collaboration, and it just builds on itself. So that's really
I'm
important.
sure you're familiar with this, but there is a recurring theme or a dialogue sometimes where the old guard sees the new generation coming in and says like, well, what are these kids going to do? Or the music industry is changing. Where are the jobs for these new engineers or these new producers? What are they going to do? And it finally dawned on me one day that we don't have to know. They're going to write their own story. You know what I mean? So the next generation of music makers just simply, they create the world in which they're going to survive making music.
It's true. And whether or not they end up making music as a financial, gain for themselves or not, or just something that they can do that's part of them, to me is immaterial. Both of the schools that I worked in were public institutions, and I have no problems with open entry people were coming in at a low tuition cost to be able to figure out, hey, I like music. I want to record music. I want to learn how to do it and meet people who do it. We're not going to get into this, too much, but I have, when it's a private institution, when it's a private college that's, $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 a year, then those questions should be answered because someone's writing those tuition checks.
Yeah, for sure.
But the same thing holds. I mean, if you've got passion, you don't need a recording school. What you need is, we have a great place to manage the learning of recording and the collaboration in the community part of it. But the best people are just going to learn how to do it. They're going to crack the book, or if they don't,
the book's called your laptop.
The book, exactly. So darn the money stuff. You record because it's stuff that's coming out of your soul.
Yeah, I agree. I think that was the motivating thing for me. I didn't really know anything about the music business when I decided that this was something I wanted to do and had to do. I just went and did it. And fortunately for me, there was a school. I came down here to Nashville and went to Middle Tennessee State University, which
a great school,
school, and probably a different tuition now than it was when I went there, because I think it was only $700 a semester or something to go, and have this incredible facility to learn in.
But education is education, and liberal arts, is learning about the big wide world and all, of the learning and knowledge that's come beyond, from before. And education for itself, to me, is what you should do anyway.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to skip forward too quickly. I think you got such a fascinating story. I want to keep asking you some questions about who you are. So you were up in St. Paul and in Minneapolis area, Minnesota, then in Cleveland, and starting these schools for the first time. Tell us a little bit, paint a picture for us. What was it like in Minneapolis and St. Paul at that time? What was recording like at that time?
Well, Minneapolis actually was a big center for recording because it was a big advertising center, and advertisers needed studios. And so what happened was that, a lot of ads were happening during the day, and I was part of that too. I started off as a voiceover engineer during the day, and then learned how to, from my mentor, and was able to, learn how to record music at night. But there weren't any schools. So I was given the opportunity with my mentor, whose name is Ben James, who's an educator, and to develop a feasibility study, if you will, because, it is, are there any jobs? Well, we're not going to have programs in vocational type programs if there aren't any vocations in which people can work. So I had to figure out well, what is my curriculum? What is it that what we do? We don't know what we do. So I had to figure out it, and write a 2-year course of curriculum of, a course of study that started, basic baby steps and worked towards entry level, and once I developed the curriculum, we didn't have a building. So I had to learn how to work with designers to build the buildings. Yeah, I had to learn how to design studios. And I'd already done, we all design our own studios from, in the beginning, it was like, tack egg crates to the wall to deaden the sound.
People go, do egg crates soundproof my space?
Yeah.
We'll hold on that discussion for a minute.
Yeah. You can just call me later on and I'll tell you all about that. But this, by the time I had gotten to work and figure out the studio portion, I'd already built a bunch of studios because I traded my carpentry labor, because I knew how to build stuff for studio time, because I didn't have any money. And so I had to build the curriculum, find good staff, learn how to teach. Luckily in Minnesota, there's the vocational education. There was quite a bit of coursework that we had to take to actually become licensed by the state.
As teachers.
Yeah, in a very progressive state. It really does, education really does mean a lot in some states, and one of those is Minnesota.
Cool. Land of lakes. No, sorry, that's Wisconsin.
No, well, Wisconsin's got cheese and lakes. Minnesota's got gophers, mosquitoes, and lots of lakes.
Cool. So, something I wanted to ask you about as an educator, somebody who's seen education in audio for decades now. Mm-hmm. What do you see happening in education now? I mean, are you aware of the extent of online education that's going on for audio?
Yeah, I am, and I think it's fabulous because you can bite off what you want, what you can chew at the time that you can chew it, and not everybody. One thing I learned is that not everyone is ready for a full-time experience. Right. People just want to take what they think they need when they need it, and
just-in-time learning. Right?
Exactly. Yes, I've heard of that, and just-in-time delivery of learning how to teach what it is you're going to teach before you teach it the next day.
I prefer oops, just missed it learning.
Well, everybody learns different, and that's one thing that I figured out pretty early on. And that some people learn by doing, some people learn by listening, some people learn by having to have you show them how to do it and then guide them through, through the learning process. And some people, can't read or write, and then but they still have the passion and they want to learn. So, so it's, you have to really kind of teach it everything a bunch of different ways to be able to hit everybody, or you're missing people and you're missing your, constituents, so to speak, people who are putting their money down to learn something. But through the learning experience, you really have to make it interesting and not necessarily fun, but exciting and have people want to be there.
Yeah.
And if they're there, then they're going to collaborate. They're going to learn. They're going to, want to be there the next day, and they're going to ask a lot of questions.
Do you see that kind of collaboration even in an online environment, where people aren't going to a physical campus somewhere?
It depends upon the teacher itself. I mean, certain subjects are, good for online things. Certain subjects aren't. I think that it's up to the teachers now that there's so much online and so everything is in the box. I think and because technology is allowing, webinars, and it's allowing like real-time experiences where people, are watching or doing something, and then the teacher can have control over the student's laptop, experience as well. And I think that that's really kind of where things are going to go.
Yeah.
In a lot of cases. I'm not a fan myself.
You like face to face. Here we are face to face in your studio.
But maybe because I'm old school and maybe that's how I learned. I'm going to definitely get out of the way and let brighter minds figure out how to teach in the new millennium.
I want to stay on this topic just for a sec because I really respect and admire your experience as a teacher. What are some of the things that are really important to teaching and vice versa? What's really important to the learning process in terms of, schools often put together teaching programs where you take 101, then you take 202. Once you take those basics, you're allowed to go to the advanced stuff. How do you see that same thing apply in the online world? And do you see that, are you aware of something like that being a missing element in the way people teach online? Or is it too haphazard the way people are teaching online?
I don't have as much experience because I left teaching 4 years ago, and I haven't looked back in a sense. Now, in terms of teaching figuring out what the basics are. You teach the basics, then you teach intermediate, and then you teach advanced. Well, one of the things that of the wonderful staff that I was able to attract at Cuyahoga Community College in the Recording Arts and Technology program, otherwise known as RAT, and we have T-shirts to prove it, is that education started out. Let's go back to what education is. Okay, so education has been going on since the Greeks and the Romans, at least Western style education.
Right.
All right, so there have been different methods of happening. As a academic discipline, recording arts. Okay, first of all, recording arts, that's one thing. Okay, it's a bunch of musicians getting together to record. And then you have to put a label on it called academic discipline. Well, already you're taking what is passion out of the box and trying to formulate a way to sequentially teach people how to do stuff. Okay, well, That's great. Well, the thing of it is that not everybody can take everything in sequence, and you have a lecture and then you're supposed to have a lab right away to solidify the concepts, blah, 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 that you taught in the lecture. Well, one of the things that we're finding out is how to integrate like a microphone class with a signal processing class, with a signal flow class, with a music theory class. So what they're trying to do now from when I left is to integrate everything. And now at least we've got the full-time people and the part-time people being able to have that same experience. Now, I don't know what they're doing online. And I know you're a big online guy, and
I've had a lot of great teachers as guests on the podcast that are teaching online. So it's just very interesting to me to see, how is that similar? How is it different? And so, not that we have to go too deep into the topic, but I appreciate you sort of, putting it in an outline like that.
Yeah. At a certain point, I don't know.
Well, cool, man. Well, so let's jump into one of my usual questions. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Can you share a story with us, you've been doing music for years and years, decades even. Can you share with us a story of a failure moment for you where things really kind of turned out to be a great learning experience?
Well, in terms of learning experience, one of the things that I do really well is to bring people together, and we find a focused goal and we go towards the goal. One of the things that what I've had to go beyond was the fact that I can't do anything. It's not my way or the highway. It's something that I can't control everybody, and the best way to get the best out of people is to create a place where they can work, but don't interfere with what they're doing. So to bring it to the session is that in the beginning, when I was producing records, I was trying to control too much. When it was, where maybe it was that I was insecure enough to not be able to trust people into how to, okay, I've got you on a session, right? And you're the guitar player, in the guitar chair, and allow you to come up with your own licks and your own stuff, and then, well, no, that's not right. You got to do it this way. I mean, what a way to bum out a session right there. So all of a sudden, and I was a little too autocratic, and
Right.
So I have learned how to gently guide sessions so that they would not be stillborn, and and we would get music, great music out of it. And as far as the writing process, I was trying to write and be inspired and write and edit at the same time. And I have a really good friend who I've known for years and years, Phil Solom. And Phil said, dude, purge, then edit, as far as your creativity. Let everything flow out and then do the editing. So
Right.
So that took a long time to do that. And that's a great learning experience for me. It wasn't necessarily failure because I was still getting stuff done, but I'm a lot happier. The sessions go smoother and everybody is happy and wants to come back.
Yeah. Sometimes failure just can look like not allowing the success to arrive soon enough.
I think exactly that. You're right. It's like, well, let's just see what happens, but be aware of it. Have your antennae up to go, that is a great lick. That has become the hook of the song.
Let's work
Yeah.
with that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me respond back to you, say some of that back to you. What I appreciate about you talking about bringing people together in the community and trying to allow them to be most creative is you're just trying to create an environment that allows them to bring out the best in themselves, right?
Exactly.
And so you're bringing the analogy over to making records in the studio too. It's the same thing with a band. You're bringing a band into the studio. You're bringing groups of people together to play and allowing everybody to just be as creative as possible. It's true. Sometimes when you're producing, you're listening to what's coming out of the speakers. Your best stuff comes from just noticing, just watching and witnessing and hearing what's happening from all these people and helping them identify when they hit a real peak.
Yeah.
It's like, you just did something brilliant. I'm calling it out. Let's do more of that. You know?
More
But
of that, less of this.
I also can completely understand because I've been there and I've tried to manipulate what was happening too much. And then you get to the end and you listen back and you go, and you just have this deflated feeling. You're like, I kind of feel like, I got everything the way I was trying to get it, but how come I don't like it?
Right. Yeah.
And another thought that comes to mind hearing you say that is that sometimes it's a controlling thought that doesn't want to trust a musician to do something, but sometimes it's also just being so attached to your own excitement. And maybe, for me, when I was first doing it, feeling excited about every idea that I might have and thinking that somehow I could just make the world, the players play this idea, or also being a little uncomfortable in my own skin about whether or not I was really qualified to be, guiding the session in the first place,
Yeah. Mhm. Well, yeah. What defines a producer? A producer is someone who says he's a producer or she's a producer and has an idea and it wants to be the trip guide through this recorded song. Now, one of the things that I've learned is that the best way to be a producer in the studio is to be prepared. So you got your charts happening. You're working with the best people you possibly can, because the best way to be a good engineer is to work with really good musicians, because then all of a sudden you're going to look like a hero. All you have to do is not screw it up. Just record it cleanly, and all of a sudden magic happens. And then when the musicians get better, they're going to bring you along with it, because you're all part of the success story.
Yeah.
But in the session, whether it's a band or whether it's session musicians, you got to let people do what they can do, and then you're assessing what's going on, and then you can gently guide with your practiced bedside manner, and be able to just guide things rather than autocratically Phil Spectorize everything.
Right. There's a difference between guiding through preparation and trying to do too much guiding in the moment such that you just missed the moment and the brilliant first take that somebody gave you.
Right.
Because you're already focused on this idea that you're thinking about that's coming next.
And one thing, actually a humbling experience was when I was at Cuyahoga Community College, we had a really world-famous jazz festival. It's on its 40th year now. And I was the director of recording for like a 10-day run every year with the most amazing musicians on the planet. I mean, are jazz musicians, they're so beyond what normal pop, normal country, normal rootsy, Americana-y stuff, and they're just stratospheric. So what am I going to add? So as a producer, I'm more of a recording supervisor, and if they play 2 takes, then they're done, because all of their ideas are gone. So you got to be prepared and get it on the first take, and then they might want to fix something, but then they go on. So sometimes being a producer is getting the right people in the room and just letting it happen.
It's funny. My brother, like I said, he was a jazz musician in St. Paul, and I was going to school for recording here in Murfreesboro. And so in school, I was learning a lot about multitracks and how you can, as the engineer, the producer, manipulate and create sound and sort of control things, or thinking you could do all those things. Meanwhile, I would go up and watch my brother have a recording session with his jazz band, and they went into a local studio, and he had everybody mic'd up really nicely, and it all went as a live 2-track mix right down to a DAT tape. There was no changing anything after they played it, and the band would come in and they'd sit and listen, and watching them have a dialogue about the take and the performance and the recording, it was so different from a multi-track pop session, because in a multi-track pop session, you might talk about what you're hearing back and the ways that you're going to change it and delete this and put this in and punch this in. And they didn't do any of that. I don't even think they talked about editing takes together. I think it was just like the emotion of a take and whether it was a keeper or not. And that was it.
And that is it. Because, there's 2 kinds of recording. You're either documenting or you're creating. Choose one.
Yeah.
You can document in the studio if everybody's on. But if somebody isn't on, then all of a sudden it's going to screw it up. And then you become, the other part. You have to create and recreate and fix. And they just don't do that. It's all about vibe and energy and pocket. And I think I've learned a lot about that. Plus, I really know how to record an acoustic bass.
Nice. That's a hard instrument to record. It is really challenging. Let's talk about
tenor
that.
saxes.
Let's not even leave that and alone. Tell us some great ways to record an acoustic bass.
Okay, so you have to listen. What I learned is you, first of all, try to figure out what the player wants and what they're going for and what style of music it is, because it's not going to be rock. If it's rockabilly, it's one thing, but if it's jazz or pop or acoustic, rootsy stuff, it's a little bit different. So the bass is a huge instrument. How could you totally capture it with one mic? To me, I use 2, and I typically use a condenser pencil on the fingerboard to be able to get the articulation of the notes being played. But then you have to listen down by the bridge and the F holes to, okay, well, where's the sweet spot of the low end?
Mm-hmm.
And so then, I'll usually use a ribbon for that. And
do you have a special tool that identifies where the sweet spot of the low end of a bass is?
Yes, it's called your ears. And for anything else, I mean, you really have to listen. I mean, EQ is nice and everything, but moving the mic an inch is even nicer because you don't get phase crap, from the EQ.
Yeah.
And that plus it's like, well, how big is the band going to be? If it's a huge band, if it's like a big band, and 18-piece big band, got all the parts of a jazz big band, then you just want clarity out of the bass because it's going to be all you get. And they're usually parked right next to the piano, which of course,
that's a quiet instrument.
That's a very quiet instrument. Yeah. And then the drummer's on the other side. And so, to record and get clarity is really tough, but really it's what is the arrangement going to do? Yeah. Is it like a trio or like a small band, which I really love doing 3 to 5 piece bands because every player has more chance, it has more space to play in. Their role is a little wider so they can do more stuff within the role. There's not as many instruments around for them to be able to, they're listening, they're playing by listening to others, and you've got your role. So, but then the bass has to be more clear and or you have to have more of a body to it.
Right.
Because the drummer is not giving you 4 on the floor in a jazz type of thing. It's the kick drum. They don't even like calling it kick drum. It's
right.
It's the bass drum. But everyone's got their role, and you're trying to put these people in a room. And the best way to learn how to record acoustic jazz is to just listen to Blue Note and Prestige records from the 50s, or Rudy Van Gelder stuff.
Yeah.
And then you go, oh, I get it. Because that's what all these cats who are learning the book, the jazz book, they're referring to, and that's what they want to hear. Yeah. So you have to go back into, well, what is it supposed to sound like in this particular genre? And the same thing, okay, if you're doing a bluegrass band, what is each instrument? Who's doing the chop? What are these people? What did they grow up with? What do they want it to sound? Now, if you want it to sound rock and roll, then it creates something different. Then you can use different techniques.
And then you might have a kick drum. And it might be on every beat, right?
In the bluegrass band.
But I mean, that is something remarkable about kick drums. I remember when I was so enamored listening to my Bob Marley CD in the car. And one day I was just like, you know what? I've never really figured out how to play reggae before. I know the upbeat on the guitar, but that was all I ever really paid attention to. How exactly does the drum and bass go together? And I listened and I realized, the kick drum and the side stick, they just happen together on the 3. Everything else is the bass or space.
Right. And so the kick is never on the 1.
Whereas in pop music, it's like the 1 and the 3, or it's the 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 on the floor kind of sound.
So maybe I learned a little bit about reggae from my console, which is a 1974 MCI console that was commissioned and went down to Dynamic Sounds in Kingston, Jamaica. And so it was really a reggae board until it came back here, and then it became a country board because Hank Cochran had it in his house.
Very cool, man.
So, I mean, so being able to use tools that have been used to create, venerable recordings, to me is it means a lot to me. It's like there's all of a sudden I have the responsibility of not screwing up with that lineage.
Yeah. Well, I completely empathize with you on that.
I know you do.
I also have an MCI console, the one that was at Studio C at Criteria, and it did, I guess its version of reggae was that it did I Shot the Sheriff for Eric Clapton. Which
actually introduced reggae to the world, really.
That's what I had heard.
He popularized that. And he also gave J.J. Cale a career too.
Now, didn't you say that your board? That was the connection. Was that it was in Kingston?
Yeah,
doing
this
reggae
is-
all the dang time.
Yeah, and actually Clapton did some work there too, and the Stones did some work there too, but not on this console. That was just a little bit earlier. They like to hop around to places that were vibey, and that's what brought them to like Muscle Shoals as well.
Yeah.
Do their work there.
Yeah, what a cool way to record. That kind of takes us to our next question here, which is a question about sharing a moment of success for you. And I think we're standing in the middle of it. You want to tell us about your beautiful studio here?
Okay. Tommy's Tracks was designed for Tommy. And I'm, of course, Tommy. The whole idea is to be able to record about a 5-piece band and a vocalist at once, because one of the things that I've always wanted to do, but I've never been able to put together really effectively, is I've always read about and I've gone to the Motown studio in Detroit, and I've been to Chess Studio, and I've been to Sun Studio, and Muscle Shoals, and Fame, and these places. And I've always wanted to put together a studio band and be able to make music, whether it's my music or whether me producing somebody else. But just to be able to work with good players, because it's a clubhouse and you have a core group of players, and they know. Actually, David Hood from the Swampers told me this once. I met him fairly recently. He said, individually, we weren't really all that great, but we really played great together, and we backed singers. So it's a whole different deal when you're backing singers, which means that you're backing songs. And so to me, I always wanted to have that experience. And so I was able to find this place in Nashville that is like 10 minutes from the row, but is, it's like, what did you say when you came in and walked in for the first time?
I felt like I was entering a fairyland over here.
Exactly, because it's like very quiet neighborhood, a kind of a compound. We have a pool, we have a hot tub, we have a little nature kind of deal, and you write songs on the deck, and it's the compound. So
good fizzy water too. You give me a fizzy water on our way.
Well, thank you. It's Kroger's usually has them on sale, and they're two 12-packs for $5. Okay.
That's the way to outfit a studio right there.
Exactly, and we're powered by PBR as well.
Nice.
But seriously, the idea is to create a nice space where people can come and hang, that sounds good, that everything is there. The keyboard part of me is well represented with about, I call it 20 feet of keyboards, and they're all plugged in and ready to go. One mute button away from being able to track. One of your questionnaires that you have people like me that you're going to be interviewing. Like, okay, think of this, think of this, think of this. What's the most important part of this, piece of recording equipment? And to me, it would have to be the Wurlitzer piano.
Okay, tell us about the Wurlitzer. I love that sound.
Okay, so I've been doing whirly pianos since I was like 19. And at one point, when I was learning how to write songs in a cabin up in Colorado, no electricity. So we had a car battery and an inverter. And every week, I would go down to the gas station and I'd charge the battery and come back up. And the only thing I had in the cabin, was no running water, cook stove, all this kind of stuff, chop wood, etc. I had a Wurlitzer Model 200, and I wrote some of my best. I learned how to be a songwriter there. So everything to me, comes out from the Whirly.
Now, did you have a way to record your songs as you wrote them, or did you have to just keep them all up here in this big melon on top of your shoulders?
It was the melon on top of my shoulders kind of thing. But at that point, there was this thing, a new device came out that was called a cassette recorder.
Right.
It was brand new,
right?
Seriously, it was brand new. I mean, we had a record deal back in that day, and we were doing demos for a label down in Denver, and was able to, so they sent us to different studios. They didn't end up signing us, but I was able to get a lot of those songs I recorded up in the cabin, when we get snowed in and stuff, to be able to get them out. And the last thing I'm doing now is to digitize all of my huge box of 1/4-inch tapes. So
Wow.
I got all the 2-inch done and the 1-inch and the 1/2-inch and the DATs and the cassettes, but now
I'm looking around. Do you have a tape machine here for your cassettes? I guess that's not too much of a challenge.
Actually, here's the cassette machine that I have. It's a stereo play school. It has 2 microphones. You can actually record in stereo. It's a beautiful device, and I haven't actually used it recently, but it's a.
We'll do it. We'll pause for an Instagram moment. So that's a good segue into the what are you excited about now question, which I would love for you to tell us about your mastering and what you do with mastering music here.
Right. Well, I've been mastering records since the early 90s. I remember buying my first hard drive, which is a 1 gig hard drive. It was $1,000, and I bought that used. And a 5-pack of CDRs was $150. So there were $30 a piece. You had,
wow.
If it screwed up, you had the world's most expensive coaster. I mean, seriously. When I first started going to AES shows, there were, Studer Studer 24 tracks were there, and I remember this little company called DigiDesign that had something called Sound Tools, and all of a sudden, Sound Designer became the format. It wasn't Wave; it was SD, Sound Designer, and I started mastering at that point. Quote in the box. I've since gone totally analog, so there's a DA. So you're usually getting a digital file, and you run it through really high class and high quality and really good sounding analog gear, and then you have a really good AD converter to get back and kind of finish your
So if a
tweaks and
client
stuff
brings you a digital mix, you take it out of the digital realm, run it through real stuff.
Yes, yeah.
Is that fair to say? Real stuff?
Well, as opposed to
simulations
in the box
of
stuff.
real stuff,
right?
Yeah, and then it gets captured again back into the computer.
Yeah, and I mean that's how I do it, and that's how a lot of mastering engineers do it. But now the plugins have become so good, they're getting phenomenal. Some mastering engineers are totally in the box, and of high quality thing. But what I thought is that when I finished the teaching thing, and I still wanted to be able to make money, and record my songs and write, record, play gigs, and that's and make records.
You mean create, collaborate, and community?
Oh yeah, that exactly. The creation part, anyway. I was good. That was going to be my encore career, was just mastering, until I showed up in Nashville, and all of a sudden these musicians are like blowing my socks off. So I'm going, okay, well, Tommy's Tracks is going to be a full service recording. However, because I want to produce singer-songwriters like myself, because I know how to do it, and I've done it for decades. But mastering really is kind of a niche that not everybody can do. My ears I've really refined and tuned, so I'm thinking 0.5 dB increments, and then it's not even what frequency, but how wide of a curve, how wide of a cue you have, or how narrow. And so to me, I want to make records that that sound like records that I would want to listen to. And so what I do in mastering is to become the artists and the producers. I've got their back. I got to figure out in mastering, what is the intent of the record? What are they going for? What are you've got, maybe if it's an EP, you might have 5 or 6 songs, or if it's a full length, you have 10 or 12 songs. You got all these songs that were recorded at different times. They were mixed at different times, maybe in different studios even, and you have to try to make a really great listening experience for the listener. You want them to put the headphones on and to defy, the norm of today of just being able to shuffle your way through your day through your phone. I want people to take them away on an experience. And that's what the artists really want too. So my job, is to help the engineer who might have, basically help people who are working in their own home studio bedrooms, which the EQ curves in their rooms are not to be trusted. Their speakers are not necessarily to be trusted. The placement of the speakers probably aren't where optimally they should be in the room. So just the physical anomalies are creating these weird frequency spectrum that then they mix, and then they wonder out, well, how come the bass is too boomy? Or how come the snare doesn't pop? Or, all these kinds of things. Or how come the S's are everywhere? Well, that's because you use that one condenser mic on everything and look at the box to where the EQ curve is on that one mic. And that means you've got 24 versions of extended high frequency. That's why you got the S's. And that's why your cymbals are like, blasting over everything. Okay. End of sidebar.
Yeah. Well, I think you're speaking to a lot of the rock stars
with
home studios who are listening to this show right now.
Right. And in fact, I've got a card for our studio. We are the Project Studio Mix Fixers.
Nice.
Project Studio Mix Fixers, because you shouldn't be mastering with that L2 plugin that you have, because you still don't know where your frequencies are. And I've got, speakers that cost probably more than your car. And I know exactly what they should say, what the frequency response should sound like. And I master a lot of records in a lot of genres. I'm more boutique-y than, I don't do it every day, but I do it every week. It's a thing where you really have to maybe give up your control at a certain point in order to make a better record and a better sounding record.
Well, I think also a lot of our listeners have an appreciation for records from decades ago, and so do you.
I do.
So you're going to probably know, there may be people who are trying to get a certain sound that you would recognize immediately and know exactly how to approach it. Which is cool.
Yeah, in different genres. And I've done a lot of mastering over the last few years since I've come to Nashville that have gone to vinyl. And you have to really master differently, which means sometimes you have to do two mastering jobs, one for CD and one for vinyl. I've been lucky enough to had a really good relationship with Brendan Benson, who has a label as well, Ready Made Records, and I've mastered like every record on his label. And I learned every record. I learned how to be a better mastering engineer, because you want that record to sound as good as those records, and the artists want them to sound that way too.
Yeah, that's cool.
I do have a quick experience.
Yeah, go ahead.
Is that I mastered a record by the Holland Brothers, which is called the Sun Sessions. Well, I did it after I'd experienced being in Sun and know the sound, the sound of the room. And it was so cool to be able to have that in the back of my brain of, how rooms sound, because every room sounds different, and then be able to master a record that was recorded in that room, that famous room.
Right.
So you know what to do, and sometimes you know what not to do. Okay, we have to keep the character of the room. So in terms of mastering, my role is to help you create the best record you possibly can with the intent that you had and, what you gave me.
Now, give us an example of some of the ways in which, through mixing or home mastering, for example, we tend to screw up that character that we had, take a record that had something really great and we mess it up because we do this thing too far or whatever.
Well, what I hear is that people crush the dynamics too much in ways that you can't fix. Once you have no dynamic range, once you've squashed the drums into oblivion, there's no way, to get life back into them. And I think that's a common occurrence. The other common occurrence, like I was telling you before, is the fact that if you're using one mic that has a particular response curve on about 5 different instruments, it's going to build up that kind of frequency range. And I give the example of the frequency range and the EQ curve of a condenser mic. So I would say nowadays look more towards ribbon mics because they don't have the high frequency extension, and start thinking about what you're actually doing as you overdub and overdub and overdub.
Yeah, and if you're going to use the condenser mic for your vocal, maybe let that be the thing that you're using the condenser mic on, right? It puts it in a certain frequency spot in your mix, and leave it alone.
And another thing is that maybe use a different microphone for the background singers, because unless it's a true, Crosby, Stills, Nash type of a thing where all the voices have to be, like in the same room at the same time.
Yeah, they sang on the same mic together, right?
Right.
Beach Boys, Beatles.
Yeah, all those. But what you should think of where the background vocals are going to sit, and maybe use a different condenser or a ribbon mic or a dynamic mic for some, so that there'll be a contrast between what you want to be the lead, and then something to be, that's tucked in the background, and then you don't have to mix it because it's already there.
Tonal contrast.
Tonal contrast. Oh, I like that.
That's what makes a great painting, right? Is
Exactly.
Contrast, or a photograph.
Well, I think of what we do is sound paintings. That's what we do, and that's what EQ is, and that's what what echo is, and what reverbs are, and and the spacing.
Yeah, so don't spill your paints and get a mess everywhere, guys. All right, so
Or you can call it mono.
So we're about to take a break and come back for the jam session. But before we do, let me see if I got a couple more questions for you. Let me ask you this one. So you may have answered this some, but see if you can say a little more about it. How have you seen recording music change from when you started to now? What are some of the ways in which it's changed? Maybe it's very obvious. So it used to be on tape, now it's on a laptop. But what about the elements that might not be so obvious to everybody?
I was lucky enough to come up with the first 4 tracks. And TEAC made a machine called the 3340. It was 1/4-inch tape, and it was 4 tracks. That actually revolutionized. This is like pre-everything, but it was $1,000, and it revolutionized the whole recording industry, because all of a sudden it gave the tools to make your own record. It started a new way of recording. So a recording artist could be someone who could take the whole project from writing the song to, you didn't demo the song, writing the song to recording the song, and then learning that experience. So that really fueled everything. So the TEAC company, who then made cassette 4 tracks and things like that, it really democratized music recording. And
it was the original laptop.
Yeah, it was the original laptop. And the Beatles did the same thing. I mean, they had really good technicians and really good machines, but it was, like 4 tracks, and then they bounce it to 2, and then they do, 2 more, and they might even go back another time. That allowed a whole new art form. I mean, seriously, new art form. And then what screwed that up was the fact that you can do more than 24 tracks of anything. And so we used to be, we being everybody, had to arrange your song because you only had so many tracks. And I remember doing an 8-track. We thought 1-inch 8-track was just great, because you could have your drums on 2 tracks and your bass on the 3rd track, usually the outside track because of edge damage and blah, blah, blah. But then you'd have this thing called the junk track, where everything happened, linearly. It might have been the intro, guitar riff, and then it might have been the cowbell, and then it might have been the chorus, etc.
And then it's the car horn in the middle of the song.
Exactly, and some stuff might even be added live during the mix, but because you don't have to pre-think, and you can just go, I can record this and I can record this. All of a sudden you got, what are you going to do with 16 tracks of background vocals? Well, now you have to spend more time to winnow those down to whatever it is. So if you don't make choices early, it takes way more time to record.
Yeah.
So
It is harder to make a choice later than it is to just make one right on the spot.
Oh yeah,
isn't
just
it?
make it, decide, okay, this might get me into trouble, but screw it, I'm just going to go do that.
I took my daughter to go look at puppies yesterday.
Oh,
Nice
okay.
segue.
I like that segue.
The first puppy we saw when we walked in, we just were totally in love with. I did not make the choice. It might have been wise that I didn't make the choice, but I just know that now to go back and look at more and keep thinking about harder, it's going to be a much harder choice than if I had just picked that first puppy when we walked in.
That's because it's puppy love. The first one. Same thing with a take. It's take love.
So you talked about, the power of 8-track or 4-track, and when there's more tracks, what do you do with them? So, and you're a recording artist, a singer-songwriter, making your own records. And if you have your choice of any kind of a recording setup for your next record, what would it be?
I still like 24 tracks because actually I use Radar, which I bought in 2001, and I've done this upgrade because it sounds good. It's the most analog sounding converters that I've ever been. It looks like tape. I think linearly. It thinks linearly, meaning you start the song, you play the song, and it can do a few things, but it doesn't have plugins. It's a recorder. Right. And so I mixed. Eric Serafin taught me this one, Mixer Man. He mixed one of my records, and I was able to watch him do it, over the few days that it took. And he would mix to track 23 and 24. Like, we couldn't do it with 2-inch because you just didn't get the dynamic range.
Right.
But he was able to mix till you screw it up, back up, punch in. The punch ins are seamless, and so you can, your mix might have 50 edits as you go and did your mix, but you could do section at a time, and you don't have to splice it like we used to do in the old days. You'd splice in, the chorus or whatever. And when you got your mix, it's the mix.
Yeah.
There's no mix redos. Can you bring the lead vocal up 1/2 a dB? That sort of thing that you can do now, which in a sense is great. Some people have got beyond the problems of, it's kind of like a rabbit hole of endless remixes.
So let me jump in on that comment too, because I want to clarify that for listeners, that what you're talking about is a system wherein you had 22 tracks coming off the Radar. They're going through a physical console, physical gear and stuff. And then the mix is coming back on tracks 23 and 24. And so you get this great sound for the intro. And then when you want to make changes on the verse, instead of worrying about automation and stuff like that, you just simply get the verse sounding great and then back up. And when the intro finishes, you just punch in on those 2 tracks and drop into the verse and then listen to it. If you're feeling it, it's a good mix change, right? And if you're not feeling it, you back up and do it again.
Yeah, that's exactly how I do it. To me, it works. As an artist, it works. As someone who's doing it for money for somebody else, it might not, because if it didn't work, then you'd have to redo the whole mix, and that includes all the patching, all the different gear, or
you just tell them, "Sorry, you can't do it.
Sorry, I can't do it. This is what we did today," and that becomes the mix. Everyone has to find their own way of working out how to make a record, and this is just my way. It's kind of old school. I'm looking this year to get a bigger Pro Tools system so I can have 32 I/O for that. So I'll continue to record through the Radar and use the converters, but then I'll either transfer it over to Pro Tools to edit and mix. But when you're doing the final mix out, I'll have I'll have so many I/O. I'll run it back through the console.
Yeah,
and then I'll be able to have the sound of the console and the sound of the Radar coming back in. But that's just me.
Well, I'm going to follow that up by suggesting that for you rock stars, if you're mixing in a DAW and you're in your laptop or on your computer, you can actually do this trick. You don't need to use an older system to do that, or even a real console. You can take your entire mix and route it all to a stereo track on the bottom of your DAW and record into that one. And rather than reaching for automation and sort of finding yourself distracted and lost in lines on the screen and trying to draw things in. I can't tell you how many times I've wanted to just reach for the fader and just make the kick drum louder. You can just push the faders until it sounds good when you hit the chorus, back up, drop it into record when it goes by, and you can create some cool stuff that way. Another benefit, I think, of doing what you talk about is that you're more likely to make real scene shifts from moment to moment than I think you would when you try and carefully manipulate the automation from section to section.
I hate working on a mouse. It's just so unintuitive to me, and frankly, as you get older, your eyes get like really more weary, and you can't see as well. So faders to me are like old school.
I like to say it's kind of like trying to play guitar with the tip of a pencil.
No, I think that's a great idea of create new tracks and then just have them route them. You can do the same thing linearly, like I do.
And then just grab faders and just turn knobs and faders until you like the sound and drop it into record, and there's your new chorus, All right, cool. Well, Rockstars, I will, as you know, include links to all the stuff we're talking about and links to Tommy's place so you can go check it out. And we'll include some of your records in there too.
Great.
In the show notes, which you will find at recordingstudiorockstars.com, or I've been finally smart enough to create RSR037, which is a lot easier to type in for you. And then just search Tommy and it'll take you right to this episode. And then also a reminder, if you're listening on your iPhone, you can simply open up the podcast app and then you'll see the logo for us there and just tap on the screen and it'll sort of disintegrate into the show notes, and you can just click right through there for easy follow through. All right, rock stars, we'll take a break and we'll come right back for the jam session.
All right.
Hey everybody, it's Lid Shaw, and I want to thank you so much for listening to this episode of Recording Studio Rockstars. I really appreciate you, and I really appreciate your time. And as a way of saying thank you, I've created a special mix tutorial just for you, Rockstars, totally free, called the Mix Master Bundle. With it, you get over 2 hours of detailed videos watching over my shoulder as I mix a song in my studio. Plus, I give you the free ebook that explains how I recorded the tracks. And you get downloadable multitracks so that you can practice your mixes, including the Pro Tools session file, using nothing but stock plugins in Pro Tools, all of which you would find in any other DAW, whether you're on Logic or Studio One or Reaper. Maybe you're struggling with trying to improve your mix technique, or maybe you just simply don't have access to multitrack files or can't record a full drum set in your studio. I wanted to give you a chance to create your own mixes from full drum kit, bass, and guitars recorded in my studio. The song is called American Winter, and it's off my instrumental record Skadoosh, and it's all available for you totally free right now. All you need to do to get it is text Mix Master Bundle to 33444, and I'll send it directly to your email. Again, that's Mix Master Bundle with no space to 33444, or you can go directly to mixmasterbundle.com, enter your email, and I'll send all the files directly to you. Thanks so much, rock stars. We'll see you guys in the jam session. Cheers. Hey, rock stars, it's Lid Shaw, your host of Recording Studio Rockstars, and we're back now for the jam session. My guest on the show today is Mr. Tommy Wiggins. Tommy, are you ready to jam?
What key, man?
Whatever key you want, dude. Actually, I'm lying. I've got pre-written questions. You can't just jam in any key. Sorry.
Okay, I'm good.
So
as long as they're guitar keys, I don't want horn keys. I can't do flats as well.
Guitar questions, anyway.
All right.
Tell us, when you were starting out and recording, what was one of the things that was holding you back from doing what you really wanted to do, or ended up wanting to do?
Myself. I was holding myself back because I was insecure with the technology, and it was all Greek to me.
Yeah, especially then, right? Well, maybe it's even more Greek now.
Well, there was a book called Modern Recording Techniques. It was like the first edition, and I had it by my bedside for several years actually, and would just read. And what is? I don't understand this. So I'm the kind of a learner that, you can read so much, but then I got to get in there and patch and do stuff. So it's really that kind of, knowing what my brain was like.
Right.
And finally being able to come to grips and say, okay, well, I'm just going to make a whole bunch of mistakes, and I'm just going to do it until I think it sounds good, and then remember what I did.
As I recall reading about your early bands, I think one of your first bands were called the Mushrooms. Was that
Mushroom? Yeah,
Mushroom.
Yes, and we lived up to our name.
Let's just put it this way: did band practice impede your ability to read the book sometimes?
Yes, in fact. Actually, just recently, one of the members of Mushroom passed away. Right over to your left is his SG bass that I'm working on. I'm either going to sell it, or once I, and give the money to his wife, who was a good friend of mine from back in college. This was again McAllister College back in the day, and we were. No, it didn't impede, but we were. This was actually before all of us were writing, but we had a really good playlist.
Nice, man. Well, I've recorded an SG bass before, and that is one of the subbiest bass sounds we ever got. Mm-hmm. Is this one also super?
I don't know yet, but look,
subby?
It's got a P pickup as well, a P bass pickup.
I'm thinking of the EBO. Is that also
You're
the same thing as the EBO?
Yeah,
different bass.
Those Gibsons just had this miles of from the knees down.
Nice, man. Well, very cool. All right. Well, so now, what was some of the best advice you received? Probably recording related.
Post Mushroom, you mean? Well, I mentioned before.
Sorry, don't eat the stems.
The best recording advice really is to be prepared. To go in and know your song. You'll waste less time in the studio. Practice your butt off. Especially with me being in Nashville as a musician, I look at myself as the luckiest guy in the room, because, the way to be better is to hire people and work with people that are better than you. And then you aspire to be better than what you are. So I'll, if it's my session and I got a band coming in, I will just rehearse and have that song, as far as what I'm doing, down cold.
So you're singing and playing your written songs with incredible musicians backing you up.
Pinch me.
And
pinch me.
So what goes through your mind that moment? Like, you start playing the first verse. Do you just have this moment where you sort of transcend yourself when it all kind of comes together and you can't believe that this is music that you're responsible for?
Right. And, you can't go, actually, there was one time actually earlier on when I was making my first record, which is called Expensive Fun. And we brought this cat in who played with Maynard Ferguson. And, he played like all the different horns, and he was playing so good, and it was tremendous, but it was too much for the song. And I went, Eddie Mena. Eddie, I think, is down in the University of Miami now. I haven't seen him in 40 years. And I said, Eddie, you are the best player I've ever been in a room with. However, what I need from you in the song is, less notes, more groove. He went, okay, man, I'm here for you. And here's this cat with, is a huge successful jazz cat. And, he was able to lock in. So that, to me, that was a defining moment, is that no matter who you have in the session, I mean, I've had Grammy winning people in here, and country music, Bluegrass Music Hall of Fame people in here and all that stuff. No matter what happens, is you're the cat on the date right now. Yeah. And, if they're going to play the song because they're professionals. Yeah. And once I learned that, then it was like, cool, we can do this. If I practice my ass off before, so I meet the expectations of them.
Well, I've seen that. It's like really great musicians check their ego at the door. Mm-hmm. Like especially great musicians will completely flip the whole concept on its head and move forward. They can go from tons and tons of notes to nothing, hardly anything. Because, particularly working with musicians here, is there tends to be a respect for the end product, which is the song. We're all just trying to get this song to lift this artist up, the singer.
Yeah, and right here in Nashville, it's the song. Everything revolves around the song, and we back singers. So if we're backing a singer, we're not going to noodle. We're going to play what our instrument is kind of designed to play, within the parameters, right? The guitar player's supposed to do certain things. The bass player is supposed to do certain things. The drummer can't overplay and can't use too many cymbals.
Yeah. Well, a common theme in trying to improve your mix is this idea to just simply get it right when you're at the source, when you're recording, when you're getting the arrangement right. It just makes the mix right, And so it's cool to hear you tell those stories. All right, so moving on, share with us a great recording tip, hack, or secret sauce, something that our rock stars can take home and use right now in their own sessions.
Really, a secret sauce is less is more. The less you play, the more space you're going to create, and the more drama you can create. And eventually, the easier it is going to be to mix. Because one thing that I learned early on, and I still fall prey to it, is that if it isn't going right, I'll probably add another instrument because that'll make it right. Well, instead, get the absolute best sound that you possibly can out of each instrument, and then all of a sudden you can have very few instruments and each one sounds like $1 million.
Yeah.
Really.
And you talk about this, the space in between the notes, the silence can be as powerful or more powerful than the notes themselves.
Yeah, there's a quote, I think, attributed to Rick Danko of the band, and it's like he didn't play notes, he played space. And it's like, whether he said it or not, great, I'll take
So
that.
did Jerry Garcia.
when he didn't say no to the mushroom.
All right. So now share with us a favorite hardware tool, something that when you have it on a session, it just seems to make for better sessions.
1176. I bought my first one for $250. I still have it 30 years later. I got a pair of them. I got a total of $600 in them.
Dude, I'll give you $300 for it.
I just sold a D version for $3,500 and was able to buy my silent air conditioner so I could record condenser mics in the room.
Well, that's certainly going to go up in value.
Makes the sessions easier.
All right, cool. So
it got to be 1176. In fact, I would just say I have had the same vocal chain for 20 years, which is a Neumann 582 with a large capsule. It's a East German kind of a Geffelli thing, into a API preamp 512, into a API 560 EQ, which is a
that's the graphic.
That's the graphic. Yeah, it's the graphic into an 1176 into the channel. Not Very even cool. Into the board, but that's it.
Well, and the cool thing about being a singer-songwriter is you find a vocal chain that you really love on yourself, and maybe stop looking so hard for the great vocal chain. Well, sorry everybody else, but
vocal chains are really important. And what's really important nowadays, which didn't used to be important, is your converter, because if you can use how much. A good converter costs $500 a channel or $1,000 a channel. I mean, like a really, really professional one. Mm-hmm. Well, most people can't buy that. And you can't expect your record to sound the same as someone who has really good converters. If you've got your old M-Box, what did the converter cost Digi to make? $1? In parts? I don't know. Maybe. So you really, if you want to play with the big boys, you got to buy some big boy tools or big girl tools.
But yet you still have the story about the 4-track. If you make a record on a 4-track and record it to a cassette, I suppose you could send the cassette off to mastering, right?
Yeah, you could. But you're not going to probably have the dynamic range, and it's going to be one thing. It's not going to be able to be big and expansive.
Right. If I've found that 4-track records that sound really fantastic tend to embrace the character of the 4-track. So perhaps the M-Box analogy is embrace the character of your M-Box if you're going to use it.
Right. Well, or hire me to be the project mix fixer, project studio mix fixer.
All right, cool. So now share with us a favorite software tool, something that you really enjoy using.
Well, I use Wavelab and for mastering. It's a really a great DAW. But I also will use Pro Tools. I mean, I used to be the director of a school, and we had 80 Pro Tools systems. We had like 7 huge studios, and you had to deal with all of the changes and of computers and things like that too. So I totally respect the modern DAW, and totally respect the fact that I'm not really necessarily a fan of the trouble it can get you into by using it.
Yeah. In a very succinct way, can you describe the difference between Wavelabs and Pro Tools? I mean, what Wavelabs is for mastering, right?
Yeah, Wavelab is pretty much it's designed as a mastering piece of software. That's what it does. It does a lot more. I know, and I've never done it, but I know you can record multiple tracks. You can record stuff into it, but basically it's just, it's for capturing and editing and putting in metadata and everything that you need to put out the final product. It's the one that I use and recommend.
Well, so this is a little bit of a loaded question, but can you sort of briefly explain to listeners how something like Wavelabs handles plugins that are going on a track differently than the way you would put plugins on a.
I think it's pretty much the same. You can add plugins,
But I guess again, loaded question. Let's get to the point, Lidge. So in a mastering software, you can assign, some plugins to an individual region of audio, as well as plugins on the whole track itself that is mixing all the stuff that's getting mastered, right?
You can, but I don't. I don't really even use the plugins.
Okay, great. That's why you didn't answer that question that way.
Like, plugins? Okay.
Like what? All right, cool. So awesome, man. All right, well, so now how about a resource for the business side of doing music for a living? Anything, any advice or it could be a person or it could be some tool that you use or a method, a way to deal with trying to earn money doing this?
Well, no matter who you are, you're probably, if you're just starting out, a really good resource is someone who's been doing it longer than you, that you can play your stuff to, and ask for advice, and have it come back to where it's not a criticism but a critique, and you can then learn from that, and then do better work from. Everyone needs mentors. And I think you need to find mentors, whether they're online or not. A mentor in a mastering situation where, I work with a number of producers. They'll send me mixes. I'll listen to them critically and say, well, okay, I can get rid of those S's, but it would be better if you did, so that I didn't get rid of the S on the vocal plus all the, the high harmonics on that guitar or whatever else is in that same vocal range. And so then they can come back and give me a mix fix, and then I'll master that. So I act as a mentor to other people as well.
Oh, that's cool,
to my clients. So I would just really say, find someone who's been around longer than you, develop a relationship as a mentee, and get a mentor experience out of that. Because we all learn from somebody.
Yeah,
so
indeed.
We got to pay back.
Yep.
We get to pay back.
Is it paying forward or is it paying back? It's whatever. It's closing the circle of create, collaborate, and community.
Yeah, it really is.
All right. So now imagine yourself, this is sort of a hypothetical question, but imagine yourself starting over again. You need a simple setup to record. You need to find people to record, and you got to make ends meet while you do it. Now give the advice to, somebody in this situation now. What would you recommend? What do they need to record? How do they meet people?
What I would say in terms of recording is that you have to figure out, well, are you a documenter of 2-track? Is that what you're going to do? But chances are it isn't. If you're a multi-track recorder, find yourself a really good 8-channel interface that has decent converters built in. and find yourself, get yourself a laptop. And just like we're recording this interview right now, is that, there's a laptop and a hard drive and an interface, and then use the best cable you can. Buy yourself some Mogami cables or learn how to solder and make your own. Buy a few as good a mic as you can buy. Get a condenser, get a ribbon, get a dynamic. For years and years, I had an RE20 and a 57.
Nice.
And then I bought my first 414 condenser microphone. So basically I had a dynamic, I had something that you could pound nails with that sounded good on guitar amps, and then I had a vocal mic.
Well, or you had a kick mic, a snare mic, and an overhead for drums, right?
Okay. And then you use it for something else. So that's, I guess, what I would say, because then what I would do would be to, once you're familiar with that, then I'd get yourself a good chain. And that's going to take you years to put together, because money doesn't grow on trees and that stuff costs a lot of money. So for one channel of anything, it's $500, whether it's an EQ or whether it's a mic pre, and that's buying, used stuff.
Right, right.
But nowadays you have a lot of boutique manufacturers that are manufacturing DIY 500 slot interface types of products. But really it's your ears and ability to identify what something is going to sound like recorded in a certain room. So if you don't have all these reverbs and plugins, you probably have 3 or 4 rooms in your house that each sound different. So take your guitar, play your guitar in each one of those rooms, and all of a sudden you're going to go, oh, yeah, this sounds different. And then all you have to do is to back the mic up a little bit, and all of a sudden you get that room sound, and then trust it. So I guess that would be my rig. And I've used those kinds of rigs, recording in huts, open air huts in Mexico and on the beach in Massachusetts, and, like all sorts of places. They're pretty portable.
Nice. And then you were telling me a story about playing music again with Larry. Is that right?
Oh, yeah.
Then that seemed like a good story about, finding people to play music
Finding
with.
people to play music with can come from anything. When I moved to Cleveland, I found the coolest club that played kind of rootsy music, and I went to the club and I saw this band called Hillbilly Idol, and Hillbilly Idol became my really good buddies. And, they put out a bunch of records, and I ended up recording some of them. But I basically said, okay, I'm going to work with this guy, and this guy.
Did they have a song called White Shotgun Wedding?
No, but they had a song called When It Rains, I Get Wet.
There you go.
So find good musicians to play with. Now, when I came to Nashville, I knew hardly anybody. So one day I was at Home Depot, and I had this room here that I was, that we're recording in right now, that had just this noisy ass this air conditioner that's just, it's like probably 70 dB. Seriously, 70 dB. And you turn it off, and within 5 minutes, it's hot and humid, and the guitars go out of tune, right? So I knew I needed an air conditioner. So they sent this guy over to sell me an air conditioner. And this guy that they sent from that company was a guy named Larry Hawk. And Larry, they said, hey, you're a musician. You know how to talk to musicians, and so you go over there and talk to him. Well, I found out that he had been a songwriter in town for about 25 years, had a bunch of deals, songwriting deals, had some cuts, did some stuff, but he was a little more rootsy rather than a little bit more market-driven. And he's a guitar player and a singer, and has a deep, gravelly voice, and I don't have a deep, gravelly voice. All of a sudden, we decided that, hey, let's get together. Well, I was kind of reluctant at first, going, well, I don't know about, I'm a solo singer-songwriter. Well, as it turned out, it was the best thing that I ever could have done by saying yes, because Wiggins and Hawk are now Americana vocal duo. We write our own songs. It's a 2-part harmony on everything. And he's become a really great friend, and not only a songwriting partner, but we're out there. We're looking for an agent. We're playing gigs. We're going down to Birmingham. We're going out to Knoxville. We're, doing stuff. and we're going to start on the circuit.
That's great, man. Living the dream. I mean,
seriously, but you never know.
Yeah.
Where people are going to come from.
Well, I mean, no comment on how old I'm guessing that you might be, but we're not 20 anymore. We're not at the time in our life when we were in school for the first time, and it was like all you had to do was go to lunch and you meet people that wanted to do stuff. And as you get older, sometimes it does feel a little bit more isolated and like, I'm never gonna find somebody like my first band. What did they say in church we were at this week? They talk about that, like living in the past, right? And so it's just great to hear a story like that, a reminder that you can still have that same kind of excitement at any point in your musical career,
That's right. And as far as dating myself, yes, I did see the Jimi Hendrix Experience. And I was experienced at the time.
Nice. All right, cool. So here's the big daddy question of the podcast. It's the big doozy.
Is it a big long drum roll now? Okay.
Tommy Wiggins, tell us, what is the single most important thing our listeners can do to become rock stars of the recording studio themselves?
I would say that you need to surround yourself and be around the best musicians you possibly can be, because by recording them, you're going to be better at being a recording engineer. And that really is it. If you want to be a better engineer, record better musicians.
Yeah. You become a better musician too.
Yeah.
Like my understanding of musicianship improved tremendously once I moved to Nashville and started recording great musicians and great songwriters.
When the drummer at your session starts charting songs, verse, chorus, et cetera, and asking you for lyric sheets, then you're on a whole different level of drummers than you are from your basic club, give me a beat drummer.
Yeah.
And that makes you a better engineer, producer, musician, songwriter, because you're put on the spot and you really have to nail it. Because these guys and gals are better than you.
Yeah. And also it's cool when people are doing that chart writing on sessions to see the way that it just keeps everything in focus. And you get to the great end results so much quicker.
Yeah, when people can hear a song, a group of people can hear the song, and an hour later you have a masterpiece of your music in the can, and everybody's high-fiving. To me, that's a religious experience, and that's why we record, is so that we can make alchemy. There's this idea in the songwriter's head, whether it's me or somebody else, and you put people in the room to realize that song, and it isn't that why you do it? It's like at the end you just go, man, this is cool.
Nice. I think that's a great quote to end the interview on. And thank you again for joining us today, Tommy, on Recording Studio Rockstars. Can you let the rockstars know how they can find out more about you, and if they want to reach out and connect with you? Is there a way they should do that?
Yes, they can. For recording and mastering, it would be through my brand new website, Tommy's Tracks, Tommy'sTracks.com. And I have some cool videos that we shot as well, just to kind of give you an idea of what we do here. And email would be Tommy@Tommy'sTracks.com.
Nice. Well, thanks again.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead. Also,
Wiggins and Hack, HAACK. We're on Facebook. I'm on Facebook as well, Tommy Wiggins.
Okay, groovy. And a reminder, we will include links to this all in the show notes. So RSR037.com, search Tommy Wiggins, and it'll take you right to the blog post. And if you're on your iPhone, just click right through and you'll see them right there, and you just click right through. So thank you again, Tommy, so much for joining us. Really an honor to be here in this beautiful studio, too. We're going to fire up some keyboards and jam for a bit.
Let's do it. Oh, I thought we already jammed.
Oh, yeah. No, I know.
Pool time.
All right. Cheers, man. We'll see you around the studio.
And thanks for doing what you do.
You're welcome, man. Thank you. Thanks so much for listening to Recording Studio Rockstars. If you enjoyed the show and want to help make it better, please leave a rating and review on iTunes to help reach more people. You can click directly over to iTunes or go to recordingstudiorockstars.com/review for an easy explanation. And if you want more free content, all you have to do is text RS Rockstars to 33444. Again, that's RS Rockstars to 33444, and I'll keep you in the loop with articles, videos, and podcast updates. And I'll let you know about any upcoming giveaway offers, all totally free. Thanks for listening. I'm Lij Shaw, and this is Recording Studio Rockstars. Now, go make great music.